We ain't going over again. We ain't doing that over again. We're starting now. All right, buddy, everybody, we are here. We are back for you. I think we're at almost episode 100. But we are back for another episode of the Vision Quest podcast. We are joined by a very special guest. I kind of talked to you a little bit before because we've had Suriano on. And you're like, hey man, I know that guy. And I started looking at some of the stuff you've been doing in some of the video things. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit further down the road. But you've done some pretty cool visual stuff, and turns out that's what you're doing. But I am joined by Mr. Mike VanBrill of what's the company name you have now?
Well, honestly, it's kind of a side thing, just like honestly,
okay.
Mike VanBrill, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So of Rutgers, you wrestle 140, was it 141, 149?
Yeah, all over the place, man. 141, 149, 157. Yeah.
Oh, you got up to 157? Holy cow.
Man.
I did not see a match that. I'll tell you this much right now. I don't do enough leading into I guess telling a story about you from before we get to you. So you're born in this little town called Malika Hills, right? Is it Malika?
Mullica Hill, yeah.
Mullica Hills. Okay. Very small. Like I was kind of intrigued when I first found in 1701, but man, tiny. Yeah. And what was the high school you went to?
It was called Clearview Regional High School.
Okay. Yeah. So with the small town you're from, let's talk about your mom and dad. So were they from there? Did they originate from that area in Jersey?
Yeah. So I'll start from the very beginning, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So I didn't choose wrestling. Wrestling chose me. I was born into a family. We were an immigrant family. My grandpa, basically started it all. He originated from Indonesia.
Wow.
Way back in the day, and long story short, he ended up in a bad situation down in Indonesia where the Japanese war came in and took over. And he was just a young kid that, started off, in a concentration camp, young in his age, where he was, working. And,
wow.
He was actually young enough to not actually be like a worker. So he was actually like in the mountains, and he would tell me stories about how he used to, with the other, young, kids, they would get into these bamboo huts, make these bamboo huts, and they would wrestle each other. And then, so that's where the VanBrill wrestling genetics started way back in
wow.
Which is, so that's where it started.
Yeah.
And he ended up actually fleeing, leaving Indonesia with just like a backpack and $100 and a kid and my grandma. They went to Holland, raised 4 kids, and then they didn't love the opportunity in Holland, so they actually moved to New Jersey, where they had my dad, who was the only brother of 6 boys to actually be born in America. So,
okay.
Yeah, and when they got to, New Jersey, it's funny, my grandpa was sponsored by a church, so he was just a dude that came in as a janitor, and and eventually worked his way up and started his own business, entrepreneurial business. But when they first got in there, all of the brothers, right, were my grandpa was a disciplinarian guy, so he kept them relatively straight, and they basically would hold all these weird events, tumbling events, and all these things. So it was in my genetics that I had some sort of athletic background, and all of them went into wrestling for Clearview Regional High School. And we actually had one state champion uncle. He was my uncle, and he actually won New Jersey States. And went to like a JUCO college and ended up wrestling for the U.S. and a little bit, but nothing crazy. None of them actually went to college and went Division I. Me and my brother were the only ones that, went to college in Division I and stuff. But really, that's kind of where the whole wrestling journey started. And then that's how I ended up in South Jersey, where, I was born, and then kind of had to, start my career at Clearview High School.
So were there other sports that came in? I mean, just obviously you had the wrestling kind of background, right? But were you trying other things as you were kind of going along, like any other usual kid would? Had soccer one year or something, football. But was there any other sport that you stuck with along with wrestling as you kind of grew up?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually love this conversation because, I grew up playing all different sports. I played baseball. I played football pretty heavily. I played hockey. I did a little jujitsu, and I played man, all the sports, honestly. You know, I was a bike rider, BMXer. I was huge into biking, and all these different things, right? And it sparked my interest in just like competitive sports and just being, you know, a kid, honestly. I played a bunch of different sports growing up.
What were your parents like, as far as we always talk about a support system? What were your parents like coming up in athletics? I mean, we'll talk about even more as we get further down, but like just as a kid, was your dad as competitive? You hear about, not like crazy dad, but he knew what it took to kind of be able to push the limits a little bit. Was dad at practice? How was dad or mom when it came to your athletics?
Yeah. So my parents were really present for my like athletics in general. My dad ended up pursuing a Division I college. He was soccer. He was a soccer player. Nice. You know, and that's what. Yeah, you said you were a soccer player. That's nice. Cool. Yeah.
Yep.
They were super supportive. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. And my dad. So you know, kind of like rewinding back, my dad started us in wrestling. And, you know, he was more so adamant on wrestling or soccer. You know, football obviously it was fun and, you know, whatever, but, you know, I'm like 5'8", like not that, you know? So it was just kind of like from the start, but my dad started us in the basement of my house, me and my brother. We would, you know, after school, he'd bring us down into the basement and he would just have us drill. He would say, you know, finish these 20 singles, you know, 20 doubles, you know, 20 high crouches, all this stuff. And then he would always be like, hey, if you do these moves correctly and you do them perfect, we'll be able to go upstairs and we'll have dinner and we'll be done for the night.
Yeah.
Turns out every time we would do them perfectly and we'd get to that last rep, he would just repeat and do it all over again. So there was never ending. And then by the time we were done, me and my brother, we wanted to wrestle each other because we were so competitive, like unbelievably competitive that, you know, he would just have us go at it down in the basement. But yeah, super supportive as I was growing up. And they really helped.
What was the age difference between you and John?
Me and my brother, just about 2 years, 1 year and 11 months.
So you guys had a nice spread. You kind of had you had good partners, practice partners. Maybe your brother didn't feel the same way like mine didn't when I practiced with him, but it sounds like you were able to kind of compete and you had that drive and both of you had it. So that makes really good partners. So when you guys would wrestle, would he go to certain tournaments and like your dad would be like, oh no, you're not ready for that one kind of thing? Was there a balance like that, or where no, he's doing it, you can do it too. You're fine. You can compete in this. How was that?
So, you know, my dad was not like a guy that was going to baby any of us. Like he had me go up in the upper, we would, you know, do like larger age groups. Like I wouldn't go into my age group. You know, I'd wrestle in, you know, higher age groups. My brother and me, we would wrestle in the same tournaments. We would go compete. That's when we really started, you know, after like, you know, 8, 10, 12 years old. I wrestled for a Seagulls wrestling club. It was really well known, not really well known, I should say, but it's been around for like since like the 1970s. Yeah. So I grew up in that club, and we, you know, basically trained, you know, all the time. We'd go to like War at the Shore, all these different like travel clubs.
I was reading that about you. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, we would just compete and we, you know, try and find the best competition, and like that's kind of how it all started at a young age. I started when I was 4 years old. Wrestling pretty hard. So it seems like you East Coast guys, I tell you what, man, like and I've never heard a story yet where dad was insane. Dad was crazy. I just watched a video of a dad shoving a ref today at a tournament. Like, but you had a dad that pushed you, right? It was the same thing I did with Liam. Because I mean, with soccer, in athletics in general, like to be in the top of whatever you're doing, you have to be doing things that other guys aren't doing, right? Yeah.
At 7, 8 years old, I didn't make him do workouts, but I made him come down to the basement at 5 a.m. to understand that he had to get up at 5 a.m. sometimes to make the stuff work. I said push-ups, I don't care what it is, but it seems like your dad had that same kind of mentality, and I wasn't down here hounding him. This was up to him. Like this was the time where I was able to leave him alone and do his thing before we go up to the practice room and start kind of needling. With that type of I don't even want to call it pressure. With that type of push, did you ever find yourself kind of like, maybe I don't want to wrestle? Or did you guys feed off of that and it was the thing you needed to keep going, was how your dad kind of gave you that push? Did you ever find yourself wanting to quit?
Yeah, so I think this is actually probably one of my favorite conversations because it shows how like, oh, you can be, you can have, at the end you see all this, success, but like in the beginning there were so many trials and tribulations that people just don't see, right?
Right.
So yeah, I remember specifically, early on in my career, for me, like I love to bike ride. I love to be out with my friends. I love to just go in nature and like cliff jump and have fun and just be a kid, right?
Yeah.
So my dad learned to kind of mold his just like ways of being a father, right? He saw that when I wanted to skip practice and do something else, it got to a point where like he almost had to back off because I was losing passion for the sport. So
Okay.
yeah, there was a time, because I started when I was 4 years old, right?
Yeah.
There was a long period of time where I just like got so fed up with wrestling and I almost wanted to quit. There was a time in my middle school career where I almost gave it up. And then there was a time in high school, actually. It was after my freshman year of high school, I almost quit.
Yeah. So that's that time frame. Like, that's kind of curious because I mean, if you think about it, just as guys ourselves, really start to kind of rebel a little bit. You got that testosterone going now, and you're like, I got this. Let me do this kind of thing. And what we had it with Liam too. We understand, like, we're kind of going through that right now. And so I've known that where I put, and like you said, the club that you went to was around forever. So your dad probably knew the guys in the club and things like that. But Liam kind of grew up to the point to where I put him in front of people where I thank God I could finally just be like, I'm done. I don't have to do anything anymore. I could step back because I didn't want to get to a point because I could see myself. I was doing that to him in middle school, and I had to kind of visualize, okay, would I want this? And it's hard. I know it's hard. I know not everybody has a Kerry Colot dad with cattle prods and things like that, but everybody gets pushed to a point, and it's just kind of interesting to see where everybody has that perspective of like, I really could have, but I didn't because I had, this, and you had to drive. You really had to drive. So with that being said, what was one of the tougher tournaments you were in when you were young, like really young?
Probably Ward to Shore. I remember specifically, it was kind of one of the turning points in like my youth career. It was Ward to Shore. I was kind of like floundering. I had success in wrestling, but it wasn't really like a point where like I had, nationwide success at all. So one year I went into Ward to Shore, and I just remember specifically having a couple good matches in the very beginning that got me to the semifinals match against this one kid. I wish I could remember his name, but he was ranked number 2 in the country at the time. Obviously, as a youth, you know what I mean? Like not high school or college, but still,
right.
He's tough. They're making a name. They're wrestling around the country. There's obviously, some sort of ranking around. He was a big name guy. And, I made it to the semifinals, and I was walking down the hallway, right, with my dad to go look at the brackets because my dad was all excited. He was like, man, we're to the semifinals. We're doing good, finally. Yeah. And we were at the bracket line, and we were looking at the brackets, and my dad was like, okay, here you're looking at the next match on who I have, right? And there was my opponent's dad was sitting right next to my dad, didn't know that they were both next to each other. And my dad or his dad said something nasty about me. He was, and maybe it's like he was just saying like, you're going to crush his kid. Like he's nobody at all. And like my dad heard that, and it fired him up. He was like, Mikey, we're going to go out on this mat and we're going to crush this dude. Like, I want you to just go all out. And I was like, I don't remember. I was just like fired up. I was just like, I don't even know why. It was a bigger purpose versus just like, oh, like winning a match. It was like, no, like I'm gonna prove to the world, like the country, my dad, like whoever that I got this thing. So awesome. I was wrestling in the match. It was a real tight match, and I was a kid that was like really relied on like big fancy moves. Like I wasn't the kid that went into practice and had really good basic technique. Looking back, should I have probably did that? Maybe. But I just was the kid that would just throw quarters and throws and all these different things, right? But it benefited. Next thing you know, I found myself in the second period. I rip a quarter Nelson. I'm up like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 points. And I squeaked out a win against one of the top kids in the country as a youth kid. So that like was a real big deal for me. And then that's what helped me kind of like continue to believe that I was going to be able to do something in the sport.
Hell yeah. So that does set someone up for, not only just a success for the weekend, but I mean that really can turn, like you said, that can turn your mind into what you think you're capable of, what you think your mission could possibly be. You're like, holy man, if I could beat this guy and then I keep working, I could go out and beat this guy. I could beat this guy. That's awesome. That's really good to hear, especially at such a young age, because again, we're in the Midwest. Don't get me wrong, we're starting to have tough wrestling. We're starting to kind of climb back to where we were from in the 80s. But you guys have always had like monsters out there and like beasts as these little kids and these dual tournaments we go to. And when you started were you guys into the dual tournament scene? Did you guys have it? Oh, he's this many pounds. We'll wrestle up to this one for you guys and go. How was that kind of a dynamic? Were you guys gone every weekend?
Yeah, so we would travel with Seagulls Wrestling Club all the time. We didn't have like the best team, but we always tried to find the best competition. Yeah. I don't know if you know some studs, man, that came out of Seagulls that just you'd never knew. One was Miles Martin. He was a national champion. Beepo
no kidding. Yeah.
He was wrestled with us all the time. I'm trying to think of a couple other guys. But yeah, I mean, they just like, so we had a couple tough guys, but it wasn't a well-rounded team. And I just remember going to these tournaments against like PA Gold, PA Blue, like all these stacked teams.
Right.
And it was just brutal because it was like, okay, I'm going to compete against some of the best kids in the country. Yeah. And, you know, we were just like this like little team at a little town. But it was one of the best things for me to start early at those tournaments because it just like you get around. I remember just wrestling guys like Vincenzo Joseph, like all these guys, they would just be wrestling. I wrestled Vincenzo. I wrestled these guys, those guys. So when you get to a higher level, you're like, oh, like I've been around this for a long time, and it starts to build like confidence within yourself that you can actually be there.
That's awesome. Well, the other thing too is you at such a young age, plus the competition that you're able to be around. Did you find yourself maybe thinking, I need to get out of this room. I need to move. I need better competition, Dad. I need better partners. I got to get this. Did you have to move on? Was there another club you had to go to kind of expand the skills a little bit more?
So here's the one thing about me and just like, I don't know if it's, you know, I stay very loyal and I keep a small circle and I've been that way. I can say that now because, you know, I was with Rutgers for 6 years when it was popular for NIL to come out and everyone to start changing up teams and like bouncing around because, you know, they may not have a starting spot or they're going to get money somewhere else. I wasn't that guy. I was the guy to just stay planted, you know, continue to build my relationships with the coaches, with the team, just like everyone around me. And like, I felt like loyalty is so strong to me that I wanted to be that. So looking back, you know, I was loyal to Seagulls. I wrestled there and I believe that, you know, as long as I train my hardest and continue to just like put my all into it, then I'll be able to just like do anything. And it turns out that it's right. You know, there was, you know, you look at, you know, Blair kids, all these tough, like, and not to knock all those teams were amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But like looking into how I succeeded in the college level, some of those guys like Bo Bartlett, some of these other guys that trained at Blair, I turned out to be beating those guys. So it's not necessarily like, you know, you look at Conor McGregor, he's a guy that stayed at some of the same training centers and, you know, he was able to succeed. So I don't necessarily think it's like, oh, you got to bounce around and try and find all these different things, right? There is a balance, right? You got to have good partners. You got to have a good environment for you to continue to work up and succeed. But at the same time, it's like dig your roots and like trust in yourself.
Very true. Very true. I think Ben Askren had said something about that at one point too. Is that you don't have to have, you know, world partners and things like that. You just got to be smart in how you wrestle and be smart in how you practice. Because I mean, it boils down to a lot. You don't realize it as a kid, especially even once you get into high school, because you think you know it all. But I mean, nutrition, you know, things like that, and just coming up and things that we don't teach our kids necessarily. You may try to, but in the I guess in the smoke of it all, you kind of get lost. Like you just like you want your kid to do well. Okay, here's some spaghetti, but you got to wrestle harder, Jimmy. You know, that kind of thing. So with the time that you came up in the competition, because you're naming some pretty big dudes, and you beat one of the big. You beat Bo Bartlett. So I mean, when you're coming up and with the competition that you had and knowing, you know, your loyalty in the things that happened, you know, whether it was good or great coming up and you had a few good matches, where did you see yourself kind of in middle school? Were you waiting to get to the high school period? Were you in middle school? Like, this is not, I need to bump up. I need to get to the further level. How was middle school for you? Because I think that's kind of an awkward time, I think, for a lot of guys when they're wrestling.
It was a super awkward time. You know, I went to Clearview. There was a time frame where our Clearview program really was bad. I mean, for decades. I mean, literally decades all before.
It happens, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But my brother actually, you know, graduated and went into high school. And there was a couple other like studs that, you know, trained at the Clearview youth team that was aware of like coming up. So what we did, my dad and some of his friends, was they actually recruited a college coach, a guy who wrestled under Dan Gable for Iowa. He was a national finalist. His name was Keith Morlam.
Oh, yeah.
He was the head coach for Virginia Tech. And he found himself in the little town of South Jersey one summer to do clinics at Siegel's. And at the time, he had left Virginia Tech, and he was looking for other opportunities. There was a friend that he had in South Jersey that brought him out to make money and do camps and clinics and stuff.
Yeah.
He actually recruited him to become the head coach of Clearview. So I knew that, like, while I was in middle school, they were planning this bigger thing going on.
Yeah.
They were trying to build a bigger team. Clearview didn't have any success, but they were trying. They were trying to do something. And I remember I was the guy. Somehow I was either caught in between weight classes or just, like looking for a competitive advantage, or maybe I was always the guy finding myself cutting weight. So even in middle school, I was the guy that was just eating Cliff Bars, barely drinking water, didn't really know how to do any cutting weight either. Yeah. So I was like, oh, let me weigh this piece of cookie on the scale. Oh, it's 0.1. Let me eat that because I'm going to be light after practice. Little did I know that all of that cookie would hold all the water weight, and then I would gain a pound from a little cookie. I learned the power of whole foods and just like, water contents and how different, real food is from processed food. So that came later down in the line. I'm kind of getting myself, but middle school was a transition where like I wasn't really owning up to like all the success that everyone thought that I was going to have. Right. So I was finding myself just like in tight matches with like weird people. I wasn't progressing. I was finding myself worried about making weight all the time. I wrestled for a travel team called Delta Force. Okay. And that was a big travel team that I would, compete with. And Shane Griffith was on my team, actually. A couple other studs. Miles was on my team. And that was the time frame where I was still trying to, like, really see if I was any good. I actually wanted to, like, really, like, give it up a couple times in middle school. I wanted to ride bikes and have fun and just, like, enjoy myself. And that's kind of – I was in a weird transition period where I was good enough, but I also was, like, I was struggling to also have passion because I've done it since I was 4 years old.
Yeah, right. Well, so we get to see you guys as college wrestlers, and we watch you as you're getting ready for a match, and you see you guys doing your certain things that you do every day. Not every wrestler has superstitions, but you definitely have habits, right?
Sure.
Were you starting to gather? We'll say gather. Were you starting to gather habits along the way of, I did this the last time, help me? Like, was it pacing? Was it music? What were you starting to kind of gather as a young wrestler as you're coming up, finding your groove? Because there's certain little things that set you up mentally, right? I mean, just for the positive direction of whatever a weekend brings, you try to, I need to have these socks along. I got to have these shoes along. I need to have these headgear. What were you building little things like that as you're going along?
So like, that's kind of fast forwarding a little bit. In middle school, like not really. Like I wasn't really personally developing. I wasn't like having like what I call like a champion mindset, like on and off the mat, on and off the field, whatever you're doing, like, building that like character within yourself. Like in middle school, like I was dabbling, I was having fun. I was figuring out who I was, like really just kind of having, I wasn't dedicating myself to the sport. That's for sure.
Sure.
That's kind of where, I went into freshman year of high school and I saw the downfall. I was having tight matches with kids that weren't really top level. And then I was struggling to beat those guys that were, in that state tournament. Right. So I found myself going 0-2 at states. Actually, I'm sorry. I didn't even make it to states my freshman year. I beat the number 1 seed at Regents. His name was Johnny Gentile. He was a wrestler for Paulsboro, and his brother went and wrestled for Rutgers, but he was a really tough number 1 seed. I beat him, upset him the first round, and then ended up losing my way out of Regions. Didn't even make it to states my freshman year. Sophomore year, I went 0-2. I made it to states, but went 0-2. And that's when my dad and, my people around me were like, okay, like, Mike, you're at the point where, you're a sophomore in high school, and you're not doing anything. So what's going on? Where do we go from here? And after my sophomore year of high school, I basically got coerced into flying across the country and attending a military boot camp. It was a wrestling boot camp, intensive boot camp. And I'm sure you know it. It's called J. Robinson Camp.
Yep.
And my dad, basically, he was like, dude, you got to go do this. And I was like, nah, like I'm good, whatever. And he bribed me with a little bit of money to go to this camp and was like, yo, if you get the I did it shirt at the end, then you'll get the money. So I was like, you know what? All right, let's do it. So
Yeah.
me and my brother, we flew to Minnesota in like, it's like 90 to 100 degree heat. And we went 30 days at the J Robinson boot camp. It was like, 6 days a week, really just crazy workouts. There was tons of training, and like I said, there was just a lot going on at that camp. So
a lot.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. Sure. They would give you negatives if like you didn't have your shoes tied, you didn't show up at 6 a.m. with your shirt tucked in or anything like that.
So I guess Robinson didn't mess around too much back then, huh? His stories are true.
Yeah, no, it was a big deal. And so me and my brother, I remember 2 weeks in, my brother actually, he like called my parents and was like, "Yo, I want to leave. Like this is too hard. This is not for me." And so I was like the younger brother that was like, "No, let's do it. Let's go." We stayed. We stayed for the 30 days. We ran the 15 miles at the end of the camp, and we developed some really, really good habits. We finally were like, okay, this is what hard work is. This is what it's going to take at the next level. So we started to like actually put in the work and feel like, okay, we're putting in the work. We're feeling like, this could be something. And I think it really propelled me to do something great. The next season, junior year, I took 5th in the state, and then senior year, I took 2nd. So like,
you're runner up.
Really, started a run for me.
So that's interesting that it's always kind of a different concept of trying to figure out, especially when you're a teenager, trying to figure out exactly what you want to do. Right now we're in the recruiting process with Liam, 17, 16, 17. These kids are as kids. I mean, you guys are put in some high pressure situations with just the sport itself. And now you're talking about trying to, everybody's asking you, what's your gig? What's your gig? You go to this camp and boom, kicks you in the ass and you're ready to roll. And obviously there's things you got to work out, but you now have this, have this vision in your head of what you want to do finally. So you see what it takes. You see how hard you can, work and put yourself through things like that. Did that really kind of turn everything around for you just mentally, even as you got into college, once you're starting to kind of get away from the high school scene? And with that being said, was the high school experience then from that point on a little more focused for you?
Definitely. Yeah. Okay. My junior year is when I decided in my mind that I wanted to be a Division I college wrestler. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that someone who's, a high schooler, an athlete, or someone that just wants to achieve like something great in their life is that you have to finally decide like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And like, this is the goal that I want to chase after. Right. So I think that's like the biggest thing. It's like, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to be good at? And like, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then giving the background that you had, and then now that you've been given the tools, as far as just what you found yourself going through and being able to put yourself through, it's big. I mean, I remember trying to train for soccer. I mean, I walked into walk-on like tryouts, really not doing much. And that was ridiculous. Like I should have done more, but I got through 3 days of tryouts, and I got through 3 days of getting slammed up against the wall by, 18 and 19-year-olds. And I'm 20, 21, just like still smoking and getting out of the bar. Like that's what I was, but I still had a goal and I knew I was going to do it. And I literally thought I was going to die at the end because I shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. But you almost died at a camp, because I know that those J-Rob camps are not fun, and I know that they will work you to death. And there's a reason. I don't think they do those anymore. I think they close those down now.
They did.
Yeah.
I actually think that like all the workouts and everything that I did, right, it trained my mind to like, because when I started my junior year season, right, I knew I wanted to try and be a Division I wrestler. And I was the guy that was cutting 20, 25, even like 30 pounds in high school, right?
Yeah.
It was brutal. So what I had to do is I had to go, I went through a full day of school, barely eating, trying to do this thing. And then I would go to wrestling practice, and we would do like hour and a half hard goes. We had a Division I college coach, so it was a serious room. Right. And after that, what I would do is I would go home. I kind of gross. Sometimes I wouldn't even shower. I'd go home. I'd put on plastic sweats, and I'd go and run 6 miles. And that was just to make weight every single day. And like, it was insane. Like it probably wasn't good for like, like health or longevity or whatever.
Like ever.
I knew that I wanted to be great. And like, for me to like wrestle up a weight class or like just try and like half-ass it really is like, that's not going to get you to where you want to be. So I dedicated myself to go down a weight class where I knew that I could, you know, go ahead and be competitive in the state tournament. So, that's kind of what the work ethic started. I was like 6 miles a day, practice, runs, lifts, like all that stuff every single day without barely eating. It taught me crazy mindset stuff that still, you know, helps me today.
And you were reminding yourself to do those things at that point, right? It wasn't dad coming to your door, knocking on it and saying, "Hey, it's 5 a.m. time to go run." You're getting up on your own doing that.
That reminds me of actually a story real quick.
Hell yeah. We won all those.
Yeah. So there was a funny point in my high school career where I had one of the biggest matches of my career coming up, right? And you know, he was ranked like top in the state, and you know, we had a home match. It was dead winter time, and I actually got sick. You know, I got like a strep throat. There was like white like tonsils, like terrible.
Oh no!
Fully blown up, could barely even swallow. But I had to wrestle, you know, and that was going to give me a ranking for states. So what I did was I toughened up, and the worst part is that when you're sick and you have to cut weight, it makes the weight cut like extremely difficult. Like, because you can't drink water. How are you going to, you know what I mean? You're sick. You're supposed to be hydrated.
Everything you need. Exactly.
Yeah. So I was dead on the couch and I was deciding if I wanted to wrestle, you know, and just like, there's that mindset thing, right? It's like it clicks in, it tells you to just get up and go. So I went downstairs and I ran 6 miles with trash bags on while my tonsils were fully swollen to the gills. I couldn't even swallow.
Mike, good Lord.
It was so bad. And I went on and I won the match, and it set the tone for that year. So it's just funny that you said that. No one was pushing me. My parents were actually telling me, Mikey, you know, slow down. You're good. Maybe just take off for the week. Just relax. Just, you're good, you know, but
it's amazing to see that transformation, right? Like you were talking about 7th, 8th grade, you're getting beat by guys, even your freshman year that you probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And you're getting into that stage of manhood, right? And you're really starting to, and Liam's getting there too. I noticed the similarities here because he's really starting to do things that he didn't do before. And you're like, oh, there must be things starting to fire properly. And now you're starting to take care of things. So with that, as you grew into that junior year, and were you in the frame of mind where you're like, I'm going to go to college and wrestle. This is what I want to do. I don't know where I want to go, but I'm definitely going to college and wrestling. Where did you start having that thought start to spin around in your mind?
Really, it was after the J-Rob camp when I was like, you know what? I put so much into this already. It's been my whole life competing. Like, I got to actually try and make something happen. I got 2 years left, and this is the time for college, you know, coaches to come and start recruiting and start to do things. So there's no other option but for me to like go full force in the sport, you know, and just try and take over and make something of myself, because time was ticking, you know. Don't make it to states freshman year. You're 0-2, and then, you know, you're set in this timeline where you're like, okay, it's either go or don't go. You know what I mean? And I started just looking at colleges. My brother, you know, he was in that weird frame where he took 4th in the state. He lost to David McFadden in the semifinals, you know, and just like, you know, he had some tough matches and things, but like, you know, he didn't really go ahead and get like a crazy scholarship or anything. And it put him in like a tight spot where like he didn't necessarily know where to go. And right at the right time, Rutgers came in at the very end and just offered him like a decent amount to try and get him there. And that's when he went and actually, you know, went to Rutgers. And like, I saw that and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to try and get my competitive edge. Is like, dude, I got to get more money. I got to try and get a full ride. Like, you know what I mean? I got to go and like, if I want to like do that. So I had my eyes set on Rutgers pretty early on in my junior year season. And at Seagulls, we had coaches, you know, like that would come in every Thursday. Princeton, like Ryder, like, you know, Ohio State. Like, so I met all of the coaches, you know, during my high school. So it started to turn and started to be like, okay, like, it's time.
So I want to give a little props to Seagulls, man, because they sound like they knew what the hell they were doing, you know, having college guys coming in because they knew that high school guys were in the room. They wanted to get them the exposure and even being able just to have those contacts. That's amazing, right? To be able to have a coach in the room that can bring guys in like that. And they understand that this room is doing something. So that was kind of where I was kind of curious because you're from a town of like 4,000. Like, how does that shit happen? Like, how do where do obviously you can obviously shop yourself out and be like, hey, coach, I got this. I don't know, was it a DVD at the time or?
Yeah.
No, you can send them a video, and get things out there. But being that you had such a great club that was involved like that, and being able to have coaches involved like that kind of answers the question for me, because I was like, man, how did you get noticed by Rutgers? Obviously, you were finalist at the state tournament, took fifth the year before, but at the same time though too, it's just to think of the talent pool that comes out of that area, Jersey, Pennsylvania, and stuff like that, to just be able to make that spark. That's another great story in itself. Yeah. So as you're going through and you're kind of getting into your junior year, were you getting contacted into your junior year by colleges by that time, because you've been going around the country and not just competing in high school, but doing other things? Were you getting contacted by your junior year by colleges?
Not necessarily. I had prior relationships with Rutgers because of my brother competing and stuff. But not so much. Princeton, I remember Joe Dubuque is the head coach now for Princeton, but I remember him being in the room and I was like, yo, I want to wrestle you. Like, let's go. And, I hit him with an inside trip and took him down, and he was like, yo, come here. And he took me to the side of the mat and was like, you want to wrestle at college? You want to wrestle Division I? I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, what's your grades like? And I was like, they're pretty average. And he's like, all right, let's check it out. Because he was like, that was another, college that came in and wanted, to recruit me. It wasn't a crazy amount of colleges. And like I said, I really didn't see crazy success until like my senior year.
Yep. We're going to roll into that. That's for sure. Yeah. We're going to be talking about that because knowing, again, just the mindset that change came, things happen a little bit later, whether you peak your senior year or peak your freshman year in college, it's everyone's different. Everyone's made different. Everyone develops differently. But as your senior year came around, was there a noticeable change? Like, where was the biggest change in weight that you had as a wrestler? Did that come like 8th grade to freshman year? Or when did a big weight change happen for you?
What do you mean weight change?
So like, as you were coming in, let's say you're an 80-pound, 8th grader, where did you start out? Then freshman year were 135 pounds. Like, how did your ascend up to the weight class you're at? Was it just kind of gradual? You didn't have any big leaps?
Yeah, no, it was pretty gradual. I did, it was 112. Oh wait, I don't even know if I was 120, 126, 132, 138. That's how my college season went.
Okay. So then as you're working through your senior year, obviously you're getting more contacts. What was your mind frame as far as where you, like Liam right now, there's a lot of colleges. Like, you obviously as a kid growing up, he had one favorite college or whatever it is, but as you're becoming more of a man, what are your thoughts in your head of like, I want to go to California and wrestle? Did you have thoughts of like other places just to kind of spread your wings a little more? What were your thoughts as a senior and you're starting to kind of go through the deeper process of recruiting?
Yeah, so I really only have my eyes set on Rutgers or Princeton or somewhere along the Northeast Strip. If you want me to be honest with you, Rutgers was really
That was it.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go like wrestle with my brother, and I knew it was an upcoming program, and that's what I wanted.
It's not a bad it. It's not a bad it at all. I mean, that's a good school. There's nothing. Anthony Ashnault. We'll talk about Nick Siriano.
Actually, they were coming in like, as I was. Well, Ashnault came in as I was ready to go.
Okay.
So like, what's funny though is I really didn't start getting recruited heavily until I, what was it, junior year or senior year? Senior year. Basically, what happened is I started going to like NHSCAs and Flow Wrestling.
Oh yeah.
They had a countrywide tournament and they were back-to-back weeks. So I was like, oh my God, like, what do I do? So my dad was like, let's do both. And I was like, okay. So I ended up going to NHSCAs and I lost like my second match in and then wrestled all the way back to 5th. And then that was like exciting for me. I'm like, oh
yeah, hell yeah.
Oh my God, like that's crazy. And then flew right from that tournament to Flow Wrestling.
Yep.
And I lost an early round, wrestled all the way back to 5th again. So that was like like that's really what like broadened my reach is like for a college athlete, like get out there, compete, like don't even care if you lose. Like that's the scary part, obviously, is I didn't want to go to these nationwide tournaments and go and lose. Like that's not the case, right? But at the same time, it's like nothing is ever going to happen if you don't go out and compete. Like lose now, like lose as a young kid, like go and just lose and risk it because like, man, you got all the time in the world. And like, if you're not going after something, you're not risking something, like you're just never going to go and like achieve something, greater in your life. And that goes for like anything in life, I feel.
Yeah. I think was it John DeJulius just put something out. He was at a camp and talking about how to kids about embrace the loss, embrace the I guess the agony of it, because it's all worth it right now. And it's hard to tell a kid that, right? Like it's hard to tell any kid that, even as a high schooler coming up and you're trying to get to some place that you just didn't get to. It's hard to say that and hard for them to get to realize it. And then now, and Liam is starting to realize it at 16 and 17. And as you grow and you develop as a person, and you're inviting that grind after a while, you're bringing it into your world. Did you find any type of struggles, which I'm sure just about everybody does, but going from that high school into college? I guess the real question is, what was the balance like for you between education and wrestling? How were you able to do that? So did you ever struggle school wise when you left for tournaments in high school? And obviously it's not easy. Liam left for Estonia for 2 weeks. That kind of screwed him up grade wise. It wasn't fun. But then transitioning into college, was your high school experience easier education wise than it was then going into college? Obviously college is harder, but some guys are smart. I mean, some guys can carry that well, and you're going to Rutgers, which is not a dumb school. So how was that balance for you between education and wrestling? Did one obviously take a little more of a precedence for you?
Yeah, 100%. Wrestling took a precedence. Athletics in general took a precedence in my life. And, I don't know, like school, to be honest with you, like I did enough to get by in high school. Like I just like B's, C's, maybe 1A in gym or something like that. But like, it wasn't, I didn't like have too crazy of a focus on it. And, maybe that's why I ended up not going to Princeton. Who knows? Maybe it was a good, maybe it was a good thing, but like wrestling definitely took a precedence, and I think it maybe worked out for me just in the sense that I ended up getting pretty much like a full ride through athletics. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, going after school, getting what I had to get done and doing the thing and, making sure that you graduate. That's really what it takes. Cause in school, it's like, even in school, I look back at high school nowadays, like what you learn, like it's super important. Like I'm not like anti-school, but at the same
time, I know exactly where you're going. Yeah.
It's like I'm learning things that aren't necessarily going to apply to my job or apply to these things. And sure, like the disciplines, like, after school, going and getting your homework done and like doing all these things, like builds discipline and builds all these things. But really it's like, man, like tell me what I learned in high school. I don't really know, man. Like, so like do what you can, like pass the grades, get what you got done, and focus on what's going to get you as an individual to the next level. Like, is it athlete? Is it like a business? Is it because obviously there's a lot of athletes that listen to this, but it's like focus on like what your strengths are and double down on those and like figure a way to get through those things, because really that's the key, obviously.
Yeah, big time. And it's interesting because again, everyone's different. Not everybody carries a 4.0. Not Liam is a 3.3 to 3.6 kid. That's just what he is. And we're there's, and like you said, there's no, it's not that people shouldn't be paying attention to education. Like he knows he has to get that, even going into college. Like that's the end goal, to have something, a piece of paper to hold on to and be like, look, I can do it, guys. It just makes you a little more, employable.
Yeah.
When you got into college, did you find it was, because I'm hearing different stories. So some guys will say, well, when I went into college, because obviously it depends on what your major is and things like that. But some guys are saying, man, I was a 4.0 student in high school, but college, I was like 3.2, that kind of thing. Obviously there's partying. There's a lot of different variables that now you kids are put in front of. Yeah. Did you find the distractions going into college to be challenging once you got there, to be able to focus on practice, school, and things like that?
So it's funny. I actually, I got by in high school, and then when I got to college, I was so afraid to fail.
Oh, yeah.
I was so afraid that I wasn't going to Yeah, I was so afraid to fail that I ended up getting a 4.0 GPA as a freshman. And that, like, you know, set the standard. You know what I say? I say a first impression is like the most important thing. It lasts forever, right? So, you know, going into college as an athlete, you know, having all these high-end coaches looking at me, right? I wanted to go in there and prove to myself, to prove to them, prove to everyone, like, how I'm coming in, how I'm setting the tone, right? So I came in, I was so afraid that, like, oh my God, like, what if I don't get good grades? Oh, like, what if I'm not able to compete or wrestle? Like, all those things were going through my mind that I ended up getting a 4.0 GPA my freshman year. And then, to be honest with you, it went downhill after that. Like, I just did enough to you know, get by and get my degree and all that stuff. But like, yeah, to talk about distractions too, like in college, like there's so many distractions, right? There's parties, there's drinking, there's you know, wrestling in general, like away from school, you could call it a distraction because of how much like you have to do, right?
Yeah.
You have to be wrestling, you have to be training, you have to be doing all these things, right? So it's like, yeah, I would say it's probably harder, right? There, and this education's harder, all that's harder.
Yeah.
But it depends on how you want to come in and.
Yeah. It's a mindset thing, right? You what you're going to apply yourself to and what you aren't going to apply yourself to. I think there's a lot that can get lost into what a kid's expectations of what college should be. And then they get there and get a little surprised. And I mean, we've seen guys that struggle, you know, we've seen guys that had a hard time just to be able to make that transition, which, I mean, it is what it is. At the same point though, too, when you got into college and you started wrestling for Rutgers, I mean, here's a question is, when you got there, Olympic teams, world teams, was that ever on your brain, or was NCAAs what you were thinking about?
For sure, it was on my mind. I was a very good freestyle wrestler. I loved throws. I loved exposure.
You do love throws, yes.
Yeah, love all the weird stuff, right? So when I got in, like I was one of the few that were very high on freestyle, on competitive, like trying to compete at in the off tournaments. And that's actually one of the, you know, like I had a lot of success. I beat like Kevin Jack. He was an NCAA finalist, beat Ashnell. I ended up upsetting him my freshman year it was like redshirt freshman year into the summer season. I ended up, you know, taking him out at a tournament. And like, that was like, okay, that was big. That was like, okay, I just took out an All-American. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was a big deal. So yeah, freestyle was huge for me. I always wanted to like try and compete on the world level, the senior level, all that stuff. So I was heavy into the freestyle tournaments in college.
Okay. I just a question on it. What was probably, because I looked through, I didn't see a whole lot. They didn't list a lot of freestyle, but I didn't see a ton of freestyle listed with you. What were some of the bigger tournaments that you went to in college for freestyle? US Opens, things like that?
Yeah, it was really it was the US Open. It was that tournament for the qualifier to try, if you won it, you would.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So like
puts you on top.
I would try and compete there all the time. It's funny, I'd always get to the semis and then lose. And I think it was just the pressure, right? You put on yourself,
it is
yourself to win and all that stuff. So it all plays a factor. Had some success, but obviously wasn't winning the tournaments and really competing on that national level like I really wanted to. But
so you never took the Greco, huh? Even with because I think you really like that underhook, don't you?
Oh, the overhook, the overhook thing.
The overhook, not the underhook, the overhook. So why Greco never really translated for you?
Well, because I knew that I always wanted to compete on the freestyle circuit. I wanted to represent the U.S. and do all these, you know, cool things. And I just thought that if I doubled down on freestyle, then it would pay off. And it's weird. I never, ever wrestled like Greco. I've never practiced Greco. I don't even know the rule set to Greco.
Oh, shit.
Like, I mean, I know, like, you can't,
that's still cool. Like,
I'm amazed. You can't touch their leg and you have to only throw an exposure and stuff. But, like, I'm pretty clueless when it comes to Greco. So I just thought if I doubled down on freestyle and tried to make it happen, I wanted to, you know, that's what I wanted to do.
Your upper body did include a lot of legs. I mean, I'm not going to lie about that. You know, trips and things like that, or even just a leg lock to get a guy thrown. So it was just kind of odd. I was like, man, he really likes the upper body stuff. I was so surprised he never really took to Greco that much. But there's not a lot of Greco guys coming out of Jersey anytime soon, if you know what I'm saying. So as you got into college, you're wrestling your freshman and sophomore year. I mean, you were doing some pretty decent your redshirt freshman year. What was that like for you? That getting that exposure to those guys now and being able to just kind of bang with college guys and being able to really compete. Was that redshirt season detrimental to you?
Detrimental?
Yeah. Yeah. Bad word. Was that season, I guess, beneficial to you?
Yeah, so my redshirt freshman year was huge. I came
Yeah.
in blazing. I came in hot, and the reason why I think it was beneficial was because I didn't come in pressured to feel like I had to be the starter. Anthony Ashnault was the 141 pounder. There was some studs all up and down the weight class, and so I didn't really have the pressure to come in and try and be the starter. So it really took the pressure off me to come in and learn and be better and just compete with all the guys that were starters. There was no pressure to me to try and compete, so I came in red hot. I was wrestling Ashnault toe to toe. Remember, we had one match where it was 4-3, and the whole team was all wowed. He probably got nervous. He was like, "Oh, you know what I mean? Some freshman kid coming in and wrestling a All-American, 4-3. That's a big deal, you know." Yeah. I remember after the practice, Coach Goodale was like, "You see this guy? He's like a dog on a bone." You know what I mean? Just continually going, right? Yeah. I ended up wrestling tons of tournaments my redshirt freshman year.
Yep.
Had a lot of matches.
Ended
up placing a couple times and wrestling some really good guys.
Yep. Third place at the Shorty Hitchcock Memorial Classic.
Yeah.
Got Lock Haven Classic title at 141.
Yeah.
Finished as runner-up at the Jonathan Kalos Bearcat Open.
Yep.
And then the East Stroudsburg University Open in your first career tournament. That's pretty decent, man. When you're winning tournaments like that, that's pretty good as a redshirt. You're no slouch. And plus the other thing too is you're wrestling in you're Big Ten. I mean, hey, so to be doing that, that was to me, I guess that's another kind of question on confidence. Was that helping you then build on as you got further in? I mean, you took, what was that, third at Big Tens? I mean, dude, you were doing, it seemed like you were just kind of climbing and just kind of doing the thing that you do. So what were your thoughts as you kind of got deeper into college? Were you thinking about, I'm going to try and make a couple of runs after my college career is done? Or were you like, once college is done, I'm probably just I'm good. When did you kind of find in your head that you weren't going to wrestle anymore?
That's a big question. I kind of want to maybe revert back a little bit onto my experiences in college and climbing that ladder you were talking about, so it's after my freshman year, I had, success and all that stuff, but that's really when I started to struggle. If you look back, my sophomore year and my redshirt sophomore and redshirt junior year were pretty tough. My sophomore year, I found myself in the middle of a weight class. I was 170 something in the off season, and Ashnault decided to go 149. It was his last year, where he won the NCAA title. And I had thoughts of going and trying competing against him. And then I had other thoughts where, maybe I'll just cut down to 141 and just I'll be bigger, I'll be stronger, I'll go ahead and do it. My brother was 157. So I was caught in this weird weight class, right? So I decided to cut from 170, 175 maybe, down to 141. It started way back into to summer. What happened was, after my regular freshman year, my real freshman year, starting, I had a good year starting of my freshman year. I went and competed. I made it to Big Tens. I lost through Big Tens and I didn't make it to nationals, but I was competitive against those high level people. So after that is when I started to struggle, because I had to go back down to 141 again. I went from, so after my 141 college career, this is my favorite story.
Yeah.
I wrestled at Big Tens, didn't make it to nationals. My mindset was all messed up. I was like, dang, I just competed. I lost my chance to go to nationals. So what I did was I went on a food bender, is what some of these wrestlers would call it.
Whew.
And I just went and ate everything possible. I was eating cookies and cream milkshakes. I was consuming hoagies and pizzas and ice cream and candies all day. I was just low on life. So I would just play Fortnite all day and I would just eat crap. And I wasn't getting sun. I wasn't doing anything. And next thing you know, 2 weeks later, I hit 180. And my body looked super inflamed.
Holy shit.
Super inflamed. I went from 141 to 180.
Oh, my God.
And my body just was in total shock. And that's when I started to actually have some health problems. I went to the doctor and I felt like my heart beating pretty hard. I just I was out of breath. I had headaches. I was just not feeling good. So I went to go get a physical and they were just I don't know. I'm going to send you to the to the hospital just to make sure everything's good. And I was like, what? Like freaking out. I was like, you serious? So I was scared to death. I went to the hospital. They had all these EKGs on my heart and on my chest and everything. And like, they were like, oh, like you're good, but like I would definitely start trying to like, live like healthier. Like maybe you got to drop weight, because I went from 141 to 180. Like my blood pressure, everything was probably out of control. You know what I mean? So that, it took me about a week until I found out about this whole holistic health thing. I started researching and diving deep into like health. And I found out upon like this weird diet called the alkaline vegan diet. And overnight I went vegan, and I was like total vegan, total, like not even half and half in my coffee. Like that's how vegan I was. Wow. I was like, meat and milk is bad. All of these, foods are just terrible. Because of how bad I felt, I was convinced. I was like, okay, all of this is crap. Right. So I went vegan overnight, and I stayed vegan all throughout the summer. That's when I knew. I was like, dude, I got to get my weight down, because I'm going 141 next year again. And all summer I was totally vegan. I actually went raw vegan. There was a point where I was only eating fruit all day until dinner. And then I'd have like a raw salad with avocados and nuts and some dressing, but that's it. I was competing and training, and like I was fully vegan. And I made it to about the fall season, right, where I got my weight under control. I found out actually how to lose weight. I was like, wow, I just went from 180 to 141, and I found like the ultimate hack. And I swear, like that diet and all these little hacks that I found were like some of the things that all athletes should know. Is like all of these things that I started to learn. I started to dive down into like the body and like supplements and holistic health and teas and herbal tinctures, and like, why would fruit weigh so much more but make you lose so much weight? Well, one, it's super high in water contents, so it just cleans out everything in your body and starts to refresh your body. So all these little things that started to play into my mind, right? I was like, I thought that I was fully on the right path, right? So fall season comes around, and I get to, I'm down to weight. I hit like 150, fully vegan. And I'm like, oh my God, I have like 9 pounds to go. I thought this was going to be easy.
Yeah.
So I started to struggle. I was making weight every week. September, October, I think like November timeframe was when I started to compete at tournaments. And there was someone in my weight class named Pete Lapari. He was a guy that, I beat him every single time. I never lost to him, but there was a point where he was starting to compete really hard, because he saw me struggling to make weight. So he was like, oh, like, is there going to be a chance for me to start,
Like an edge. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got to the Midlands tournament, and I got totally destroyed, dude. Like, and there's a full comparison where I won the first match. Second match, I wrestled Michael Blockus, right? He was a sophomore in college, and I was 1 year older or whatever. This was back in my career. I ended up wrestling him in the Big Ten bronze medal match to place third in the country. But rewind back to the Midlands redshirt sophomore year, I got my ass handed to.
Yeah.
And
I think you had 3 wins at the Midlands or something like that.
Maybe that year, but I lost. I didn't even place. And I ended up that tournament. That's when I gave up my spot. I was like, not right away. I ended up eating meat for the first time after over a year. I ate meat, and next thing you know, my body goes up to like 158, 160. And I'm like, dude, I'm not making 141. Like, dude, this is done. Like, this is done. So I ended up basically giving up my spot that year and packing it in for the year, which was super.
So that's got to be rough. So when we talk about the, because you had your down, right? Your food binging on whatever, found your way, you're getting a couple things figured out here and there. And then with that, did that feel deflating? Was that just something where it set you back a little bit? But obviously you have a mindset. You're there at Rutgers. You have a good support system. It's not like it was just I'll give up kind of thing, but like, man, what the fuck do I got to do here? Cause like, it's getting out of hand. Where did you really find yourself just kind of having to kind of buckle up again and get back to that mental mind state of like, hey, look, I can do this. Cause I mean, there's no real lows at the end here for you. To me, I mean, you're talking about losses and stuff, but again, they all led to something, right? They all got you to something. So how did you feel like you ended up, like, when you wrap up your college career? How do you feel about it?
Wrapping up my college career, I mean, it was a perfect story. I mean, like, being from, some kid who wasn't a blue chip recruit. I wasn't the most talented. I didn't come in with all the wins. I struggled. I had some minor successes, and I just stayed the course. And then at the very, very, very end of my career, when I had my career on the line, and that's the story that we can get into.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled out the biggest win of my life, and then rattled off like 6 wins in my career, and like placed third in the country. But it was funny. Like, after that sophomore year, yeah, it was deflating, and I didn't know what was next. I was like, trying to figure it all out. And after that year, I went from 141 to 157. I bumped up 2 weight classes, and had an average career. I had a pretty good year. I beat a ranked guy my first match, and had a pretty decent career at 157. I ended up. What happened at 157 was I had an average year. I didn't qualify for nationals, so I went into the Big Ten tournament, which was at Rutgers that year. And I went in like, basically, okay, this is it. Like, this is your chance to make it. And, I actually beat and revenged all my losses at the Big Ten tournament from that year at 157. These guys were bigger than me, man. I was not a true 157 pounder. And, I ended up placing, I think it was like 5th. I think 7th. I'm not too sure.
I'm looking at it. There's just a lot of. I'm probably gonna mess it up on what I read here, but I think it was something like that. Yeah, it was
157. I ended up taking 7th at the Big Ten tournament, which then got me an automatic bid to nationals.
Yes.
And guess what? How crazy is this? This is the craziest time of my life. 157. I spent 20 years of my life trying to make the NCAA tournament, right?
Yep.
Finally make it at a weight class, like that I probably shouldn't have been at, but I make it to the NCAA tournament. COVID cancels the NCAA tournament 3 days before I get there.
Every guy I interviewed, this COVID shit, I tell you what, smacks everybody in the face, man. So let's talk about that, because that was so obviously how did that hit you? I mean, I'm talking to guys that, especially doing interviews, that they're talking about, teammates are out in the gym crying, this is, you guys have worked your fucking lives for this stuff, and boom, not done. You guys are done. Not going to wrestle. Not going to do it.
No explanation.
None. I mean, COVID. That's COVID.
Yeah.
That's what you guys get. Yeah. So what was the temperature in the room when that all went down with you guys?
Yeah, I remember specifically when it happened. There was a time we were training, we were getting ready to go for the Big Tens. We were, basically the bags were out, ready to be packed, and Goody and all the, Donnie Pritzloff, all of our coaches were just like, we're gonna train, we're gonna have this NCAA tournament. There was a lot of political and things just going on, right? But we were just locked in. We were training, we were trying to make it, and remember they all gathered us in like very monotone, and Goody was like, "Hey guys, I just want to inform you that they canceled the NCAA tournament." And like, I was just like, "What? Like, how is that even like real?"
Right.
I qualified for this. Think about that. I spent 18 years of my life training for a goal to try and get to college and make it to nationals, right? I spent 3 years just grinding my whole college career, trying to make it, didn't get it, was close, didn't get it. And then I make it, and the NCAA tournament gets canceled. I was like, what?
Yeah, it was such a great lead up to. I mean, just kind of looking at you beat Bo Bartlett, right?
Well, no, right? that was my 157 year. Yeah. So that wasn't Bo Bartlett, but yeah, that was the year prior, 157.
Your redshirt senior year, yeah. You beat Bo Bartlett. I mean, so like you're talking about, you had all these wins, like at a weight class. You're talking about that shouldn't have been there kind of thing, but like you had. So it's kind of like as a person and as an athlete thinking right now.
I've never wrestled Bo yet. That was my redshirt junior year, was 157. If you see.
What the heck is that? So I'm literally reading the Rutgers page. I'm reading what they had down for you. Sometimes these guys don't get everything right. So
yeah,
I'm going to stop reading that. Anyways,
go ahead.
What a letdown, right? I mean, just like you said, it was a weight class that you weren't at. It was just something. It sounded like it was going to be great. And then boom.
To the national tournament, they gave me a bid. I barely made it. I made it to the national tournament, and boop, they cancel it.
So what do you do after that? You guys just
crazy. No, I did
find grass. Did you? No. So were you punching stuff like that kind of crazy?
No, this is where the story got real crazy. Yeah. So I, was at that point where COVID canceled the NCAA tournament, and I was at a turning point. My 4-year contract with Rutgers was up, and long story short, I found out that they weren't going to give me a scholarship to come back for my next year. So I was like, "Yo, are you serious? Like, I made it to nationals, and you're not going to give me any money to come back."
Yeah.
I was pissed. I was like, and I love Rutgers, so like still to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like lost. I was like going through all these crazy things. I'm like, do I come back? I'm gonna have to pay like $25,000 to come back for a master's or more. Like, this isn't even gonna work, dude. Like, what am I gonna do in my life? And then like, my parents were like, hey, do you just want to come back to the business? Do you wanna, start working? Like, you could just pack it in. Like, that's it.
All good.
Dude, oh my God. So I went back home. I started working in the pool company. I started doing construction. I was just doing labor. I was, I don't love that. So I was like, in my mind, I was working 5 months, just like grinding. Yeah. And it got to the point where I was like, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, and I don't even know what I'm going to do right now with like college. I got to go figure something out. So what I did, I packed my bags and I flew all around the country, and I picked up a new hobby. One of the Rutgers wrestlers, who's a little crazy, he picked up this hobby, and he introduced me to this community of cliff jumpers. And
oh boy,
listen, I'm not proud of everything that I did. Do I recommend this to other people? No, but This is my story, and I'm just the reporter in it. Okay,
that's right.
What I did. Okay, so I traveled all around the country. I went to Oregon. I went to all these different like places where beautiful landscapes, where I started just steadily jumping cliff diving. And I started to like take it competitively, like really competitively. I started to go from 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet, 80 feet, 100 feet, 110 feet. Like,
interesting.
Like I went full like competitive. Like, I was jumping 30 feet higher than Red Bull competitions. Like,
holy cow.
So no, not many people know this story, just because like I don't really talk about it. It's like daredevil, adrenaline type guy, and I'm not that guy. I'm
sure.
I got big things coming in my life and all that stuff, but at the same time, it's like there was something in my mindset that clicked, right? And I'll talk to you about this, but yeah. So there was a point where it was August, and there was a point where I had to make a decision. Am I going to go back on my own dollar, or am I not? Okay, so I was playing with my life, whatever. I started jumping. I set a world record. I jumped off a 110-foot cliff with my friend. I backflipped it. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane. Like, I have the videos, everything. Yeah. So yeah. I was like, wow, that was insane. I'm never doing that again. And then a week later, Goody calls me, and he goes, hey, like, do you want to come back? And I'm like, yeah, I want to come back. And he's like, all right, well, come back on Friday, and we'll see what happens. Yeah. And let alone, I was still coming back on my own dollar. He didn't like offer me a scholarship or anything, but he just offered me to come back and train.
Yep.
So I go back on Friday. I knew it was match day, and long story short, Friday I come in, and it was wrestle-offs. Like, literally, they put me up against my partner to wrestle off right away. First day back in training. I was cliff jumping, traveling the country, like doing this crazy stuff, not even wrestling or training. And they throw me into my wrestle off, 149-pound wrestle off. And I was like, that was the year after COVID. That was 2021.
Yeah.
And I come in and I win. I win my wrestle off. And and I'll tell you one thing that I got from the cliff jumping, from the mindset. It was like, I like literally had my life on the line, and I was like, just like, I saw a bunch of things. I saw people get hurt. I saved this kid's life. I had all these crazy things happen to me. And I'm like, dude, I got to go back to wrestling, and I got to fully dedicate myself to this. So when I went back, I was like free of like any baggage. I thought that I wasn't ever going to wrestle again. I had all these things going through my mind that, I could lose this sport. So I went back with a free mind, like totally free and clear. Okay. Went back, won the wrestle off, and that's when I went. We had a try meet, first one of the year. We started our year in January because of COVID. They had a year lapse. First dual meet, I have Kanan Storr. He's ranked number 6 in the country from Michigan. Then I had Griffin Parriott, ranked number 4 after that. And then my third match was Minnesota, all in one day. Michael Blockus. He's ranked number, I don't even know, 15.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so I go in, I wrestle Kanan Storr, barn burner of a match. I lose in the last by 1 point. I go to Griffin, so I lose. I go wrestle Griffin Parriott. I lose on a locking hands call. Okay, to the number 8, whatever his ranking was. So now I'm 0-2. The guy that I beat for the wrestle-offs is like staring over the mat like, okay, he's 0-2 for the season. Is it my time to come up and be ready? Nope. Goody gives me that second chance. Against Michael Blockus, top 15 kid in the country. Mm-hmm. I pull out the huge win. I pull out the 15 ranking win, which gives me a ranking and then sets me up for the Big Ten tournament. Okay. This is where my whole career like changes, okay, in a day. So I'm seeded number 11 at the Big Ten tournament. Mm-hmm. I come in, I lose to my first round. I get caught in a headlock to Michigan State, Peyton Omania, who was ranked like 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, like this is really it. Like this is really it. If I lose this match, I actually have COVID granted us another year of eligibility.
Yes.
So I could come back for another year. In my back of my mind, I'm like, dude, I just went 0-1 at the Big Ten tournament. If I lose again, I'm never coming back. This is it. Like, this is it for me. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I lost at Michigan State, Peyton Omania. I dropped to the wrestlebacks, lowest point in my career. My coaches aren't really even – listen, I love the coaches, but at that point, they've put so much dedication and time into you, and you're just not performing. They're just like,
all right,
this is it, dude. Like, you know what I mean? So long story short, I dropped to the wrestlebacks. The number 2 seed, Max Murin, drops to Ridge Lovett. Okay. So number 2 seed drops in the wrestlebacks to like a 1-4 kid.
I remember.
Yeah. And I'm like, career on the line. I go back to my hotel. I'm just so down, so out. You know, I almost slept through the session. I get on the bus. I'm running to the venue, right? I get to the venue.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I had this weird moment of like gratitude. I was like, wow, I'm just, you know, I'm like, this is my last match of my college career, literally.
Yeah.
Last match of my college career. I have no pressure on the line. This kid's number 2. I'm like number 11. Like, this could be it for me. I had this weird like moment of just like gratitude for the sport. I had no pressure on me. All the pressure that I felt of like needing to win, needing to do this, totally erased. Nice. Total and utter freedom. I was like, okay, this is it.
Yeah.
Drop into the wrestlebacks, and I pull out the biggest win of my life against the number 2 seed against Iowa. And
that's so that is a man of transformation. You know, just the moment of clarity, the it's not base jumping, but the cliff jumping, and just the kind of, man, what a journey. Just to kind of put yourself through the ringer and doing the cliff jumping, like that is, wow. I don't want to call it reckless. You know, I mean, you found something that called you, right? And it was something that you felt appropriate to go do, and you did well. You know, it's not like you weren't going without fear. I think when you do things like that, you have to respect the fear, but at the same time, you plowed through. Do you think some of that helped you come through that?
Oh my God. You realize what fear really is, and you realize how to like overcome the fear and like how to perform within the fear. Right. I think that's one of the biggest things is like putting your mind, your body against the limits and seeing what it can do. And like, you have to be so locked into every single millisecond because your life's on the line. Right. And wrestling, it wasn't like that. Your life wasn't on the line. You were just going out and you're doing a sport. Right. But that changed. It changed within me to go ahead and, you know, like become like comfortable within that fear, you know, become like one with the fear. Like, I think, you know, as a mental thing, it's like, you know, one of the biggest things is to look at I did a lot of mental training, a lot of mindset training. I've hired performance coaches, psychology coaches. We had one at the Rutgers wrestling team every single week, right? One of the biggest things that I learned was how to like actually look at your mind as like a highway. So you're driving on a highway, right? There's so many turns that your mind can veer off and think fear, think this, think that, right? Oh, weird thoughts come in the mind. Oh, like, you're not worthy. Oh, like, you could lose. Oh, what's your mom going to think? Oh, what's your parents going to think? Oh, what's your coach is going to think? All these weird veer off paths, right? And every time that you could just like lock your mind in and just continue on the path and just continue in faith, right? You're not going to have all the answers figured out, right? Faith is moving blindly, moving towards light, moving away from darkness, and continuing to just trust the path. I think that's like the biggest thing is following and trusting the path.
And you did. You followed a path, and man, you made it your way out. That was a big win. As much. So I mean, I grew up as an Iowa fan, coming up as like 5 years old. Yeah. So that's a big win. That's a big win. No matter what. I think even if he's not ranked, that's a big win for a guy, right? Like,
but talk about mindset. Talk about mindset. You win one of those matches. You win one. I won that match, right?
Yes.
Then I go and win 5 straight against all the top ranked kids in the country. So like talk about mindset, right? What is going through? I think it's fascinating. What went through someone's mind to go from, what went through my mind from going from guy who cannot beat the top ranked guys to beating all of the top ranked guys in one day.
Flipping that switch. Yep.
It's getting out of fear. It's getting out of and letting go of all of the negative pressures that you're putting on yourself. You can totally 100% ruin your success in your life, in your sport, and whatever by just letting all of these negative thoughts control your mindset, control all of these things. It can veer you off the path so quickly is what I learned.
Yeah. And again, it was just kind of watching some of those matches from that last season and seeing just what you got the first takedown against Bo Bartlett. Like I remember watching that, and I didn't remember the match because I know I watched.
Before you get to there, because I want to get to there. Guess what happened?
Yeah.
So I went through the Big Ten tournament. Yep. I placed third in the country, and I went on to the nationals. I didn't even compete the way I wanted to. However, guess what? Third at the Big Ten got me a full ride for my master's degree. Goody, guess what he did? Goody paid. He paid for my year prior that I went on my own dollar, and then paid for the master's degree.
Nice. That's commitment to an athlete right there. That's showing, hey, we know you can do it. Yeah, stay the course. So
that pushed me into my senior year season when I went 49 and had even more success.
Watching that, just kind of how you wrestled, and I didn't try to compare you to like past, seasons or anything like that, but just watching you wrestle those guys, just watching the confidence level, just watching how you approached, I guess, like a takedown, because it's hard you're in the Big Tens, right? You're in the Division I wrestling, getting in a takedown's great. Are you going to finish it? And you did. Like, you were just sneaky finishes too. Like, but it didn't look like you were thinking about it. It all seemed like a natural flow, right? And that's kind of where everybody would like to get to before they get to a certain age or whatever. But you had a really natural flow about your wrestling, and again, that overhook and coming into upper body stuff and being able to utilize it, and the confidence that I saw, just in even some of the losses that you had. The confidence was still there. I mean, you were bummed, and don't get me wrong, every guy gets bummed, but then watching the week after, it was almost like it didn't matter. You were there. You're in the moment, not in the season. You're in the moment, not in the season. I kind of like to point that out to Liam too more. Be in the moment. Don't worry about this long term. Right now is what matters. That's hard to realize. And just watching you as you grew through that and kind of got to the process of the no fear and just kind of letting go in the moments of clarity. I think a lot of people can take away from that just because your path isn't necessarily a set one, you can make your path. You can make it how you want it and champion your own way without having to bend to what everybody else. Because like you said, you were a seagull, man. You weren't jumping all over, going and doing everything else, and you stayed that course. And I think that laid the foundation for a lot of what we're talking about now, just even after the cliff diving, dude. Oh shit, man. That's impressive. Yeah. So once you get done with college, what were your goals when you see the end of the wrestling thing? What was your brain? Did you maybe think I want to start a club, or maybe I'll do this? What were your thoughts when you're kind of coming to the end?
I think this is a topic of conversation that's not talked about enough, because I think it's the hardest thing in the world for someone to go dedicate their life to something, and then one day it's just fully over. It doesn't even matter. Like, it's just, I remember, at the NCAAs, I didn't compete the way I wanted to. And I was like lost. And to be honest with you, in one of the biggest ruts of my life. I think they say an athlete dies twice, and I think that's true. I died after my wrestling college athletics. It was you're the star of the show. You're competing in front of thousands of people. You have one set, clear, definite goal of becoming an All-American, becoming a national champ. Everything is set in stone. You know what you're working towards, right? And when that's over, like, what happens? Well, you need to reset your goal and like continue into something else. And like, that takes time. Like, how can you expect someone to just like do something their whole entire life and then have a set goal afterwards? Man, I was broken, and it took me, I was in a hole for over a year, I would say.
Yeah. You just kind of take a break. You're just doing your own thing. Did you go? What's that?
Yeah, go ahead. You can go.
What did you go into food? Were you back into food again? Were you doing that?
Yeah.
Again?
So honestly, after that sophomore year and everything, like I stayed on the whole food and holistic thing the whole way through.
Okay.
Still do today. But yeah, like going back to, getting out of college, like it was, I went straight into business. I started working for a family company, and I just, did that and got into sales. And I got my real estate license. I graduated, I wrestled NCAA tournament, and then went straight into real estate school, got my real estate license. Just trying to figure out what I wanted to do, man. And, I sold a couple homes. I sold like 4 or 5 homes right out of college, and I started selling some pools too. I sold some residential pools as well.
Okay.
Man, I tell you that was like the minor successes, but all throughout that, it was like trying to figure out what I want to do, man, freaking out. Just like, dude, I'm not in the right path. I'm not doing this right thing. And one thing I will say is, like, looking back on wrestling, it's like, man, there were so many times where I thought that I wasn't on the right path. Like, I had all this darkness. I was like, am I doing the right thing? Is all this commitment to the sport worth it in the end? Like, man, is it going to pan out for me? There's so many times where I thought in my career that it wasn't going to pan out, right? And at the very end, a little sliver of my career turned into my whole career being so worth it, right? And that's a thing in business that I can take the tactics that I learned from wrestling, the vision that I turned from wrestling, and apply it to business, right? Like, I can be like, oh, like, I'm in business, I feel lost, I feel like I'm not in the right path, like I feel like I'm just like not doing the right thing. Well, I felt that in wrestling too, but I was doing the right thing. And that's the key. It's like, in those times where you don't have faith, you don't feel like you're doing the right thing, is the times where you're on the right path,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, your journey's been, it's not done, obviously. Yeah. You're doing some great stuff. You're getting your own thing going and getting your feet wet in the, I don't even want to say in the real world,
Yeah, it is.
With the connections that you've made in wrestling will always carry through. I mean, and obviously you had great coaches, you had great support system. Your parents are great. They have a business, so it seems like you're going to try and find your own way no matter what, but at least you have those foundations now with the family and family business and school and just the connections you made. Do you see yourself maybe trying to possibly take up a coaching position at some point at all, ever?
So I was the assistant coach at Clearview for a year. I competed. I was like, coaching them. And then actually not too long ago, I tried to make the Olympic circuit. I competed at the Olympic trials, the last chance. And, I won and then lost and, didn't make it. Didn't make it really. But at the end of the day, I kind of made a decision as of recently to move out of my little small hometown, and I made a really great connection, and this is why I'm here in the studio right now. I use my video skills and branding skills to take up an opportunity with another really, really successful high-level entrepreneur who built a really successful software company, $100 million company, and he was a wrestler for Boise State. And
nice.
So man, like I said, use anything you can, right? Like, as an athlete, if you're graduating out of college or anything, right? Man, I would give every single person, especially nowadays in the social media world, if you're an athlete, use your personal brand to your advantage. Start posting your journey as a wrestler, regardless if you're a top athlete or not. This is what I'm going to say. I started my brand as a guy who was struggling. I made my first real film before I had success at the Big Ten tournament, before I did that stuff. So start documenting your journey, start documenting your failures and everything, and make it visible for everyone on the internet, right? Because people will start to follow you. People will start to, tune in, and over time it will build connections. It'll build, a whole audience for you to actually start to build connections with. And that's what I did. This personal brand has now led me to connect with multiple 9-figure entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I'm not one of them. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here. But
Yeah.
that's like I said, we may be in a small community, but now talking about technology and social media, that reaches, it's huge. It's huge. So it's impressive to see, and seeing some of the videos that you had put out, those are awesome. So you already had a vision kind of coming up and what you're doing, and now being able to apply that and putting it, it's something, it seems like it's a passion you have, right? It's not just I was putting some videos together, just slapped some stuff together. It's a passion you have, and that's awesome. And yes, that is going to follow through. It's going to, I would say that wrestlers are probably the most employable people on the planet. You know, right next to any other Olympic person that's been, to the Olympics, things like that. But wrestlers just have a work ethic.
If you're a wrestler, you have something, right? Yeah. You have a work ethic, you have drive, you have something that's going to last you forever. If you can get through the sport of wrestling, like Dan Gable said, everything else in life is easy. And to be honest with you, there is a coercion to that quote, because even out of college, even out of, into business world now, I'll tell you what, I am still struggling. I'm struggling to find what I want to do with the rest of my life. I'm struggling to find out like what my passion is, and like really what's going to drive me and what's going to make me like have that energy for life like wrestling did. It's actually harder as someone who's competed and dedicated yourself to something, because you got to pick up and leave. You got to give up something. You got to look away and look past, and you got to look in the rearview mirror, which is sometimes one of the hardest things in the world. But like I said, if you're a wrestler, if you're an athlete, if you're Division I, if you're a high performer, you have something.
You're correct. You're highly correct. So we've been going for about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
What awesome. I want to do, I always do this with everybody. Are there any shout outs you want to give at the end here? I don't care who, give me a company. I'm free, man. You put it out there.
So right now, like I'd say, like, as I'm kind of, starting my next venture, right? Like, I have some plans of, keeping athletics in my life regardless, whether it's competing in the senior level again, probably not, probably, all this promotional boxing stuff, Jake Paul, you want to run it, bro? Let's do it now. But seriously, all that stuff is super interesting. Entertainer, someone who's just continually, someone building a brand, like that is, something that I'm shooting for. And, I, at the same time, can look back on myself who was, 10 years beforehand. And I feel like I could give so much value to the person on the other end, whether you're an athlete, whether you're, someone trying to build a brand, whether you're someone who's just trying to be a high performer in life, whether it's, the nutrition, the brand building, the technical video editing stuff, all the stuff that I'm learning from all these high level entrepreneurs, people who are building huge, massive companies, right? I want to bring all this knowledge, all this stuff that I'm learning, and all of this stuff that I've learned throughout my career, and I want to bundle it up into, a training to give back to people who, have or going through the same struggles that I've gone through, and give it to them as a blueprint, right? The champion blueprint, right? Correct. So that's an inside look on what I'm looking to build long term, is the champion blueprint, something that I have in the works right now. And, that's kind of what's going on back here.
Yeah.
Nothing really set in stone, but like I said, I want to develop people. I want to develop athletes and entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are just trying to perform at a high level, people who are trying to get nutrition right, who are trying to get their mindset right. And business and branding, all that stuff. I want to, teach people and just give back. And, that's a passion project for me, like long term. Right now I'm just in the midst of, trying to get my feet on the ground as someone who is an athlete to someone trying to get into the business world. It's tough. It's not easy. And I still have, many pits and valleys every single day. I question myself if I'm making the right move every single day. But like I said, this is the path of the champion, someone who can, take the negatives in their life and like I said, just, get back on that mental highway, get on that path of just continual personal development and just continually to try and better themselves. But yeah, shout out to Seagulls Wrestling Club, who, grew me and, into the wrestler I am. Shout out to my parents, my dad, my mom, people who have been along there for the journey. Shout out to Rutgers Wrestling. Like I said, they gave me an opportunity to, showcase my skills. Most people, who are not blue chip recruits can't, get the chance to wrestle in front of huge crowds, right? Rutgers in New Jersey gave that to me, gave me a fire under my belt. It gave me an audience. It gave me a platform to showcase, all the skills and the mindset and everything that I learned. And I would have not been able to do it without Rutgers. I wouldn't have been able to have that platform without them. And man, they were just the best thing to happen in my life. And I'm so happy that I stayed loyal throughout those years, because man, they gave me, some of the best times in my life.
True Jersey kid, man.
That's
all the way through. That's right. That's right. So what's a message you got for the kids? A lot of kids watch us. What are some of the things you want to pass out to the kids as far as some advice here?
Yeah, the biggest thing for the younger, the athletes, or someone who the younger, high people who just want to perform high in life, right? I think the biggest thing that you're going to have to figure out is right here. Now, there's humans, right? All of us are given a body. All of us are given skills. All of us are given talents and all these things, right? But and actually people, these young athlete, or if you're younger in general, you're going to look around, and there's going to be people that go through the same program as you, people who have similar support systems as you. But there's going to be very few people who actually go and succeed and actually become high performers in life. And the answer is going to be right here, because there's so many distractions in this world, right? There's people that have talents, they're gorgeous people. They have athletics crazy athletics. They have talents, right? But half of them, I'd say 80% of people, never get to the point where they actually can step into their calling is the biggest thing, right? I think finding, what you're good at, finding, and minimizing all the distractions. Like as a young athlete, right? You have, chasing girls, chasing, bar scenes, drinking, doing all these different distractions, right? Lock in right now, because life and these opportunities that you're going to get are going to fly by like that. You can think, oh, I have college 4 years. I have, all this time. You don't, right? It's going to come down to the wire for a lot of people to actually go and achieve something. So make sure that you have your mindset right. Take away the distractions. If you're spending 7 hours a day on your phone, dude, get rid of it. Unless it's personal development, YouTube content on how to grow your mindset, how to become a better athlete, workouts to do, all these things, dive in and lean into people who have the apple on the tree that you want. Pick a mentor, pick someone that has something that you want, and latch onto them. Continue to produce their content, listen to their content, and consume yourself with positive thinking and the people around you. I'm going to say one more thing. Yeah. Your life is the culmination of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if your friend group and all the people around you are spending time, wasting their time, just playing video games, going out, just doing things that are not going to benefit a long-term goal, dude, you got to separate yourself, and you got to just think of yourself as something bigger, because like I said, another thing is, nobody in this world is going to think of you higher than yourself. If you think of yourself highly, if you think that you can achieve big dreams, if you think that you can chase these big goals and aspirations, you'll be able to do it. People around you will start to think that you could actually do it too. But if you can't think it, if you can't see it, or believe it yourself, it's never going to happen. It's not going to be up to your coaches. It's not going to be up to your parents to succeed. It's not going to be up to them, right? In the end, it's going to be you putting in the hours, putting in the time, and actually cultivating that self-belief in your mind, that you could actually achieve these dreams. Those are the biggest things that I got to say to a young athlete, is now is the time to just take away the distractions, put away all the nonsense stuff. This generation it's harder now. You guys are born in literally the time with the most distractions. You guys got the phone, you got all these just negative influences in your life, right? It's time to actually put it down and try and find a way out, and find the good people in your life that are going to lead you to the goal that you want. Well said.
So yeah. It's been a great conversation. I want to talk to you for a minute once we're done. Honestly, there's more to talk about. We're definitely going to have you back on. We always want to touch back in with, see what guys are doing and see what kind of progress they got going on, and see the new things they got going on. It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the story. So take note, kids, build your mental brand. Once you believe in yourself and believe in what you can, man, you can do anything. And that's kind of what we're starting to see with a lot of these guys, with the Bo Bassett's and all the other guys that are starting to come up. I mean, look at the branding. I mean, it's everywhere. You can't avoid it. So put yourself out there, guys, but put yourself out there in a positive way. Put yourself out there in a way that's going to show people that you're trying to do good things, that you're trying to move in the right direction, a forward direction. So social media can be a tricky place. Social media can be a dirty place.
Yeah.
Social media can also bring you. I mean, look at Jake Paul. Bring you a lot of money, man.
And if you
do
guys
it the right way,
if you guys need help on anything, just reach out to me through DMs. Like literally, I'll answer. Like I'll help you guys. Like I'll help you create videos and branding and just like all these things. Like help you get recruited. Like all these little things, I'd love to help. Help my younger self. You know.
So he's everywhere. He's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. You're on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
I think you're on Facebook. So he's everywhere, guys. If you got some questions, reach out to Mike VanBrill. He's here to help. Check out this episode for sure. You know, down the line, take some notes. If you got questions for anything you said, reach out to him. But we're gonna wrap it up. I'm gonna talk to you for a minute once we're done here. But it's been a great episode of the Vision Quest podcast with Mike VanBrill, man. It's been awesome. I appreciate it. So we're gonna hit that final music and we're gonna cut everybody out. Peace.
Let's go.